Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. It is a beautiful sunny day today. Quite cool outside the greenhouse, but in the greenhouse here, it feels wonderful. Today I'm going to be working on my bog forest. I'm going to be working on the trees, getting them ready for the Bonsai show that's in 2 weeks. Many of the trees in the forest have grown once again since the last pruning and need pinching back once again. And I'm sure before the show in 2 weeks, I'll have to go over the forest once again and do kind of last minute touch-ups. One thing I've noticed with the forest is that the newer trees, the tallest tree, the tallest black spruce here, and the larch back here, those were the last trees to get planted in this forest. And if you look at the foliage on them, they're kind of a bluey green color, whereas all the other trees that are more established are kind of a deeper green and brighter green growth on them. So the newer trees, if I kind of wiggle them, they're not really firmly rooted in the pot yet. And same with the larch over here. It's kind of wiggly, whereas the more established trees, they're really firm in the pot. So that indicates they have, a bigger and better root system under them. So I'll just have to, wait. These trees will slowly get more and more established as the roots grow every year, and they'll turn the same color as all the other trees in the forest eventually. The last time I worked on this forest, I did mainly the larches. I didn't do much work on the black spruce at all. I pruned the larches to a conical form using my blue scissors, kind of just shearing it to that conical shape, cutting through a lot of the branches. You can see some stubs here. Quite a ruthless operation to get that conical form tighter. And you can see there's a lot of back budding now that's growing out, and all these new shoots need to be pinched back to bring them back into that conical profile. I mentioned the other day I'm also going to remove the needles from the bottom of the branches to try and get more separation between the branches, so it doesn't look like so they don't look too dense, so they look more like a miniature tree rather than a conical pruned up Christmas tree. The black spruce are growing really, really well with lots of vigor. All the new buds from spring are extending into longer shoots, so they all need to be pinched back, and I'll have to do a lot of shoot selection. It's just getting too dense in the canopy. I'll pick my better branches and prune away the rest. I'm going to start the work today on this larch that's out front, so you can see the new long shoots on it here. So I'll just come in between the needles and prune the tips off. I could pinch them also. You could come in, grab the part you want to keep, and pull off the rest. Either way works fine, pinching or pruning with scissors, just to prune them back into the profile, into that conical form. Some shoots down low here. So I'll also be doing branch selecting next. So you can see right now it's kind of, you can't see the separation between the branches. It's all just like one conical shape, green conical shape. There's no definition of the branches. So two things will help that. One is plucking away the bottom needles on the branches. It'll give a little more space between the branches. And the other will be a branch selection. So trying to keep my horizontal branches will be about 1/3 down from the top of the tree. And then as I go down the tree, I'll get my branches to be weeping. And as I go up from that 1/3 level, my branches will go upright. So that's how I'm going to prune the branches, pruning them for direction. So I'll keep my better branches and prune away the ones that aren't going a good direction. There's a stub I can prune up. So this will be a fairly detailed pruning on each tree. It'll take quite some time to remove all the needles facing down, to sort out the structure, to see what I'm keeping and what I'm not. It's just a matter of treating each tree as an individual tree and just slowly going through the trees until the task is done. And I'm hoping as I do this work, the trees look better and better, and they look more and more miniature and more convincing as a tree in a forest. This operation of the plucking of the bottom needles is similar to a pine, where you will get more light into the branches and also get more backbudding because of that light reaching the branches. So it won't be so dark on the interior of the tree. You can already see on the bottom here I'm getting more branch separation. You can also come in with your tweezers and pluck the needles out. This tree's kind of getting small for me to fit my fingers in here and do it properly. So I think the tweezers are better. I can also pluck the tips off with the tweezers. Like that. So from the last operation, I got a little bit of browning on the trees where I pruned it back, but not much. Yeah, the tweezers work much better than using my fingers. I can really get in here and get the needles I want. The tweezers also allow me to prune out any needles that don't look so good, ones that have brown tips or kind of funny colors. Some of the needles are extra long compared to the others, and you can prune those out, pluck them out. Anything that looks a little odd on the tree, you just pluck it out. I can also pluck out some of the needles that are blocking the trunk. I want to see bits of the trunk. I don't want the trunk totally hidden. So I'm allowing some areas of the trunk to be seen. And this kind of plucking is just a matter of personal taste. You just pluck away the excess needles until it looks about right to you. Some people really like sparse trees so they can see the branches and the trunks. Other people really like full trees that are nice and lush and green. So you can see you can see the branches much more clearly now, the trunk more clearly. I think the whole tree looks more miniature. And I'm doing all this work, way in advance of the show, because if you do, step back and you see your tree and you think, oh, I took too much off, and it's got 2 weeks to grow in again, to kind of fill out. So by showtime it should look a little fuller and maybe a little more natural looking too. Lots of vigor at the top of these trees, so I can prune away, pluck away a little more needles at the top. Again, trying to balance the vigor, which is what bonsai is all about. Balancing the vigor in your tree so it grows evenly and slowly. So you can see all the separation I'm getting between the branches. It's looking really nice. I'm very pleased. Here's a shot that shows kind of the before and the after. This tree is full and conical, looks more like a Christmas tree. This one, you can see the branches, the trunk line. It looks more like a miniature tree, one that you would see in a forest. I'm removing needles going back in towards the tree, keeping my needles that are fanning outwards. This apex was getting very, very dense. So I'm thinning out the needles. And you can remember that larch lose their leaves or their needles in fall. They're a deciduous conifer, is how they describe them. So they can take, a bit of defoliation, especially in the upper apex here. Taking some of the vigor out and plucking out the longer needles now, keeping my shorter ones. Well, that's looking much better. There's a long needle here I can take out, one here. This branch is a little long here. Took it back. Well, that's a big improvement on this tree. The next tree I'll be working on is this one here. So you can see this tree looks very similar to the one here. So we'll get another kind of side-by-side comparison after I've worked on this tree. You'll see it'll probably look more like this tree here. You'll see branch structure and separation. Starting with my longest branches again. Pruning them back. The ones in the apex I'm pruning back harder, keeping them very short and trim. One of the things I like about some of these trees in the forest is that the branches go all the way down to the ground. And you see that in a forest if you walk through a forest. Generally on younger sections of the forest, you'll see that as the trees grow older and taller, usually the lower branches die off. But you know, this tree's on the outside of the forest here, it gets full sun, so it'd be quite typical to have the branches go all the way down to the ground. So I've restored the conical shape to this tree now. So now I'm going to go in and begin the needle plucking. Moving all my downward facing needles. Now these tweezers work really well for this. When you work on small trees like this, you almost have to have a different set of tools because they're so small. You have to get in there and the hands are just too big. So I'm starting on the bottom layer, getting some branch separation now by removing all these downward facing needles. I'm starting to see in through the tree, which is nice. And I would say, you know, you can safely remove at least 50% of the needles off of a larch. If the tree's healthy, it'll grow no problems. It won't even react like anything happened. I've done this needle thinning before in my larch forest, and it was very successful. So I haven't really pruned any branches away for structure yet. I'm going to step back once I have these operations done and look at the tree and see if there's any branches that need removing. I'm sure there will be. Like, I can see one that's growing straight up right here. I'll take that away right now. I don't want that one growing straight up. So that comes out. This one crosses the front of the tree. I can take it out also. Just to open that up a bit more in there. Creating some negative space in the tree, so it's not just a solid foliage mass. So now I'm going higher, removing the lower needles. You can bend the branches up, see what's going on underneath them. Larches are very flexible. Here's another branch growing up that I'm going to remove in here. Take that out. That gives me a little more space in between the branches there. Not so cluttered. Take this tip out here. That. I've seen some really good small larches bonsai, and they're amazing to look at. They're so, you can get them so miniature looking. It almost looks like it's a different kind of tree. It's unbelievable how small the needles are and how fine the branch structure is. So that's how I'm hoping to get these trees, is, you know, get them really nicely shaped in miniature. So when people look at it, they go, "That's a larch? Unbelievable." Maybe that's what they'll say, I don't know. So you can see the branch separation starting in the lower part, working my way up here. It's quite dramatic, the results. And it doesn't take all that long for each tree. I mean, it might take me several days to finish pruning this forest up, but doing each tree isn't, it doesn't take hours per tree. It's just a matter of probably 15 minutes to half an hour. And that's the magic of bonsai is, all this work I'm doing on it is invisible when you see the tree, and it just looks like a natural tree in miniature. You don't realize how much work goes into miniaturizing a tree. I'm sure most people who go through a bonsai show just think they're genetically dwarf trees. But it's all done by genetics, not technique. Yeah, you can really see the trunk line now, and it's quite twisty, this one. You can see it comes up, kind of curves, and it's a bit of an S-shaped bend in it, and then it straightens out. Now, some people like to leave the back of the tree fuller, so there's more foliage at the back, so the tree looks full, but you can still see the branch spacing on the front and the trunk line. So that's another option. It all, like I said, depends on what you like in a tree. If you want it more sparse, you would thin the back out equally as the front. If you like it to look like a fuller tree, you can leave more foliage or more needles in the back so it looks like a solid green conical shape, but you still have the branch structure showing. So it's all just a matter of personal taste. Yeah, it definitely makes this tree look more miniature with this needle plucking. So ideally, this operation isn't just for show trees. It's part of the training process for larches to keep the light in the branches so they can back bud, balancing the foliage on the tree so it takes, you're keeping more vigor on the bottom and taking more out the top, needle thinning more as you go up the tree. So I have high hopes for these trees into the future because I am spending so much time training them. I think this spring I've made, I don't know how many videos on this forest, but quite a few, because I've done a lot of work to this forest already this year. And you can see it's paying off. The work you put in pays off in the future. So here I have a clump of foliage. I can't tell what's going on. There's so many needles in here, so I'm kind of pulling out some just to try and be able to see what's going on in this section of the tree. I can't see the branches. All I see is green needles everywhere, so I'm thinning it out so I can then go in and see the tree, the structure of it. And now I can. So I know I can prune off this one branch sticking straight up here. Prune the stub away. I clean that branch up. Now there is one branch here. I think that's okay. It's a little crowded here. I'll just do a little more needle thinning. I'm thinking this tree is going to take me more like half an hour to 45 minutes. So on this tree, I am going all the way around the tree using the same techniques, removing all the lower needles, and I'll see what it looks like. I think it'll look fine. This tree is quite dense. If it looks too sparse, well, then I'll know for next time not to do this around the back, just to leave it fuller. But I think it'll look good on this tree. It's a very full tree. Lots of needles on it, lots of branches. So on larches, the first flush of growth always has the longest needles, so every flush of growth that comes after this will be smaller and smaller and more miniature looking. So by fall, I think you'll see some really fine growth on these trees. They should look really good if all goes well. Here's a look at the tree now. So you can see the branch separation. It's much, a little more sparse, but it still looks good and full. It looks healthy. It looks very natural, I think. Let's go over to that other tree. So this tree's being done also here, this one. But this one over here hasn't. So you can see it just looks like a, well, like a cedar tree or something without any branch separation. It looks like a hedge more than a tree. So I've got, let me see how many I have left to do larches. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more larch to go. I've got all the larches out front pruned up, and I stepped back and had a look at it for the first time, and wow, does it ever look more miniature? I'm just amazed. I still have a lot of larches to go, but yeah, what a difference. It really makes it look more realistic, I think. Wow. And hopefully in 2 weeks I'll get, more shoots growing in. Should look pretty cool, I think. So that's a kind of a look at it. Still lots of work to go. I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 larches to go. I've been working away all afternoon on the larches, and they're making good progress. I still have a few trees in the back to finish up, but it's getting close to being done as far as the larches. I'm going to the community orchard now, and we're moving a larch. We had it in the growing bed, and it's from the same batches of larches that these trees came from. So the one we're moving today started out as a little tree like this. It was planted in the ground, and now it's tall enough to put in the ground outside. So it's really grown. I'll bring my camera and you can have a look at the tree to see how small these ones are and how large the same tree can get if it's grown in the ground. Here is the larch, the same ones as in my northern bog forest. You can see them in the ground here, so they're quite tall. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. And then there's a giant birch here that's the same age, and then some cherry plums. So they're all going to go out into the garden eventually, in the First Nations garden and the spiral orchard. I have got the birch out of the ground. I got a fair amount of the roots. Here they are. So it was a very shallow root system. Weren't any deep roots on it. So I think it'll transplant quite nicely. It's going in way over there in the wet spot, the low spot of this whole property. It'll get lots of water and should do quite well and help soak up some of that water. I thought the larch were larger, but I was thinking of the birch. So the larch, I think they'll have to wait another year, maybe even 2 before they go, into the ground rather than this grow bed. These cherry plums here, they're ready to go in the spiral orchard. They're really tall. So I've been working on pruning these to a single trunk, which was quite difficult to do. They tend to get a lot of branches. So they're kind of single trunk form now, ready to go in the orchard. I'm thinking the birch can go in right here. It's the low spot on the property. It's very wet and moist. In spring there's always standing water here. And it's far enough from the medicine wheel garden here that it won't cast shade on it. It'll integrate nicely with the cedars here. There's room for our roadways both sides around it, so I think it's a good spot. So over here it will go. Oh no, you go ahead. Here we are, we've got the birch tree planted in the lowest spot of the whole site here, so it should get lots of water and do well. Definitely a sign of spring. I have the summer tires back on the Nissan Micra. I've really enjoyed working on the northern bog forest this afternoon. The more I pluck and prune away, the better the trees look, and it really inspires me to continue. It drives you, it motivates you, seeing what the transformation from bushy trees to miniature looking trees. So that is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me. in the bonsai zone.